Moses.
God?
Yes, I'm ready to continue my commandments.
Great, let's go. I'm ready for it.
Thou shalt not kill.
That's a great one, God. If I may say so, it's a lot more practical than the day-to-day life than the first four you gave me. But this one, if we follow it, we can all live in peace.
Now, after this place, I want you to go to that land I show you and slaughter all the people living there.
What?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the promised land. All you need to do is kill the people there.
But you said not to kill.
Man, I'm God. I know what I said. But what I'm telling you to do now is what you need to go do.
Okay, God. What is the next one?
Thou shalt not steal.
God, I don't mean to question you, really, but if we're going to that land that the other people live in, and we take their land and possessions, aren't we stealing?
Of course not. That's why I told you to kill them first.
Oh, okay, I get it. You're playing 3D chess. Thinking ahead. I gotcha.
Thou shalt not lie to your neighbor.
So, it would be okay if we went to that land, told the people we come in peace, and get them trusting us, and then, kablamo, kill them, because they're not our neighbors, right?
Oh, I see what you did there, Moses. Showing off that big brain of yours.
So gender is just a social construct, and believing in God is a crutch. When you mix them together and give them a whirl, what do you got? Atheist T-girl!
Hello, everyone. It's Atheist T-girl, also known as Alanis. Today, we are going to do math formulas on the 10 Commandments. Doesn't that sound fun? But first, it's time for Fundy of the Week. Today, we're going to watch a clip from Dr. Robert Jeffries, Senior Pastor, First Baptist Church of Dallas. You might know him because Trump recently retweeted him, talking about how he could start a civil war if Trump got impeached. Well, we also get to hear his wisdom about how to save the climate.
Just got back from the UN to hear our tremendous president give a blockbuster speech on religious liberty. I mean, it was absolutely tremendous. The only thing more fun than listening to him is listening to the liberals whine about that he had the audacity to skip the climate summit. And, you know, I tell people, Todd, all the time, I mean, this president is brilliant. I mean, he decides to skip attending a session on an imaginary crisis, climate change, and instead he chooses to lead his own conference on a very real problem, global persecution. I mean, Todd, what president can you think of in either party who would have the guts to snub the UN like that and stand up for what's right?
It's a fair point you raise, and this whole global warming, tree-hugging fiasco, I mean, there's just, again, nothing to it. And as you point out, they may as well hold a commission hearing on the Tooth Fairy or Bigfoot. Sasquatch.
Yeah, and look, nobody's arguing. We ought to take care of the environment. I mean, Genesis 1 and 2, we need to cultivate the earth and keep it. But God said he created the environment to serve us, not for us to serve the environment. And look, you know, this Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old, she was warning today about the mass extinction of humanity. Somebody needs to read poor Greta Genesis chapter 9 and tell her next time she worries about global warming, just look at a rainbow. That's God's promise that the polar ice caps aren't going to melt and flood the world again.
Now, usually I don't try to do reactions to these, but I do want to bring up a couple of points. He talks about Christians wanting to save the earth and take care of it, but that's not the term he uses. He uses the word cultivate. Cultivate does not mean to help the earth thrive. It means to change the earth to suit your needs. So when he's saying the Bible tells them to be good to the earth, he's being a little disingenuous here. And also, he's an asshat. The idea of what I'm about to talk about was introduced to me in an excellent book, The Founding Myth by Andrew L. Siddell. Thank you, Tiffany, for suggesting it. But first, I would like to thank today's sponsors, math teachers. They paid me so that they could get back at you for saying, when am I ever going to use this in real life? So let's take an equation. D equals K plus A plus S plus L times N. The first step towards working this would be to do the multiplication, which you end up with D equals K plus A plus S plus Ln. Got it? Good. But what if we were to make a change? What if instead we had D equals parentheses K plus S plus A plus L parentheses times N? This would mean that the N is applied to the other variables. Generally, we would solve the inside first, but if we do not know what the variables are and wanted to break it down, we would get this. D equals Kn plus An plus Sn plus Ln. Easy, right? Now, here's something you might not know. This is a picture of the Ten Commandments in the original Hebrew. Now, where in this picture would you say the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th commandments are? You might be able to guess that they're probably somewhere up around the top right, as that would be past the halfway mark. But it's pretty hard to tell where each one is. I don't see any indentations or line breaks to indicate where each commandment starts. If we were to take a direct translation of the commandments, we'll see each of the commandments are not numbered. And as an interesting and related note, Old Hebrew had few punctuation marks. They did not use capitals or spacing to indicate the end of one sentence and the beginning of another. So when you translate this part of the book of Exodus without modern punctuation and spacing, you get this. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, lie against your neighbor. The translators took this and broke it up to be 4 separate sentences. You shall not murder, period. You shall not commit adultery, period. You shall not steal, period. You shall not lie against your neighbor, period. Now, let's go back to our math equation, the original one. D equals K plus A plus S plus L N. Here are the variables. D is you shall not. K is kill. A is adultery. S is steal. L is lie. N is neighbor. When you break up the block of text as the translators did, you end up with the lie having an additional modifier of do not lie about or to your neighbors, which would imply that it's okay to lie against someone who isn't your neighbor. I sometimes wonder if this is where some of the Christian cults get the idea that it's okay to lie to those outside of the religion if it helps the cult. Because for them, the people inside are their neighbors, and everyone outside is not. But if you remember in the beginning, I gave you a second equation. D equals parentheses K plus A plus S plus L close parentheses times N, which resulted in N being applied to all 4 of the variables, which when you read it out would be you shall not kill your neighbor, you shall not commit adultery with your neighbor, you shall not steal from your neighbor, you shall not lie to or about your neighbor. This has a radically different meaning than the translations we are used to. It implies that these injunctions only apply to your neighbors, but others are not covered by it. And at this point you might ask, well, that's interesting, but we have no proof that it should be interpreted this way, right? And of course, you should know me asking this hypothetical question means that I have some indications that maybe it should. At the beginning of the video, I did a cute little sketch of Moses getting the 10 Commandments and God giving them contradictions to them. This honestly was one that stumped me back when I was a fundie. God says don't kill, then just a few chapters later he's telling to invade the promised land and commit genocide. Modern apologists try to make a word game out of this and try to keep God from telling his people to break the commandments. Well, if you look, the term is murder. Murder is what humans do to each other out of sin. God told them to kill the people. Killing in the name of God is justified and thus is not murder. QED. And even as a kid, that one stuck to me. It doesn't matter if you're murdered or killed, at the end you're still dead, and the person who killed you is still holding a bloody knife. And if we believe our God is right and he told us to kill, and that makes it okay, then why do we say it isn't right for others to kill when their God tells them to? But if God meant all these commandments to only be applied when in context of neighbor, and he only considered the Hebrews to be neighbors to each other, then his following orders to go steal the land, take the young female children to rape them, and to kill everyone else do not conflict his 10 commandments. And rather than a shining example of the foundation of Western law that right-wing judges make them out to be when they try to get them put up in their courtrooms, they were rules that only applied to the right people and not to others who can go off and suck an egg. And if the Old Testament is not enough proof that maybe these commandments were only made against those who are neighbors, look to the parable that Jesus used in the New Testament named the Good Samaritan. The religious leaders asked Jesus, "Who is our neighbor?" Which is a pretty dumb question if in the book of the laws, except for the 7th and 10th commandment, God really doesn't do much more than explain a few small rules you should handle with how you talk to your neighbors. So why would it matter to the people in the New Testament who their neighbors are? But it would make sense if they were adding the modifier neighbor to almost half the commandments, especially the ones that would do the most damage to others. So in conclusion, if we use this second interpretation of the 10 Commandments, we don't end up with a list of universal laws handed down by an omnipotent God who wants to help everyone. Instead, we end up with what would be a pretty good list for a human to give his followers if he wanted them to be nice to each other, but still be ready to wage war whenever he wanted them to. Thank you for watching today's video. It's a little on the short side. I'm getting back into the swing of things. Thank you for being patient with my absence. I'm happy to be back. If you want to see more of me, go to atheist_T_girl at Twitter. Right now, I'm also trying to stream videos of me playing games every night. Usually you can find them on my YouTube channel, but I'm also doing it on Twitch and Facebook. If you want to see me on Twitch, again, look for atheist_T_girl. Facebook, not yet. That's my personal Facebook. If you have any questions or comments or want to leave something I did wrong or want to argue with me, please put them in the comments below. But again, the same policy rules as before. I will not take transphobic comments in my videos. I can delete them because it's my channel. But I hope y'all have a great time, and be sure to watch this weekend for Dwindling in Disbelief at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have a good show. And as always, hope you have a great day.